Hi, Claire Yardley, my counsel, and the prosecutor for PPS. And I'm I'm not trying to conceal my opinion about police and police prosecution services, but I do wish to be courteous and professional in these communications with you, and I apologise, but I've spent about 45 minutes trying to find a document with your name on it, and I know there is one, but I can't find it. And I've seen you briefly in court twice because I've had 3 case review hearings, each the second and the third of June from the second and the first. But the main one that the main representative of PPS was the one from my first case review hearing, which was some earlier date, and I kind of want to call you Claire, I kind of want to call you Erin. I feel like it might be Tessa. Like, I know that I will recognise your name immediately, but I'm very sorry. I know what you look like. I'm just sorry, I can't remember what your name is. Part of the reason for this video is going to sort of address the reason sort of around that, and that's the fact that I do have some damage in some parts of my brain. Now the MRI, the brain MRI that I had, that I was referred to by my GP, wasn't funded because Ministry of Health doesn't do community funding. my fellow New Zealanders don't pay for investigations into brain injuries caused by non-physical impacts. So although there have been changes in my white matter indicating, without further investigation we don't know, but they're certainly consistent with the symptoms that I've been reporting to my GP, even if a causative a causative line hasn't been drawn, and that's largely because although I got an appointment quite quickly, I have to pay for it, and I still haven't paid for it, and it was $800, and anyway, so I think what people don't understand is that the impact of all of this, and this is it's just utterly irrelevant if I'm guilty or innocent. This is on the level above that, which is basically on the same level that there's an assumption of innocence until guilt is proven. It's on that sort of level. It's not confined to that, but it's on that kind of level because there are lots of laws that police and courts have to obey. I don't have mental health problems in the sense that most people would understand that to mean if you were to say that. So if you were to tell someone that Caitlin has mental health problems, the connotation would be of, some sort of lack of, some sort of uncontrolled sort of psychosis or mania or, delusions or something like that. I mean, we all know what mental health issues or mental health problems means. And it's there's a linguistic fallacy that's used a lot where someone, it's referred to either as the Mott and Bailey or the bait and switch. In philosophy, it's called the factitious equivocation fallacy, where people switch in between two definitions for the same word to get them out of scrapes where they get almost like their opponent almost grabs hold of them, but they're like a greased pig, and they go, oh, well, all I mean was this. And the thing is, yes, I do have mental health problems in a very plain and very broad sense, and those mental health problems are secondary to external events. And I'm going to discuss that and the other topics that concern me very much about the premature timing of the trial, considering that Clare and I haven't even talked about my charges yet, and she gets back on the 15th of January, you see. Now, she was assigned to me, I learned from my previous counsel, PPS, which was conflicted, my counsel at PPS, that she was assigned to me, not agreed to. She early on agreed if LSC or LA, played ball, but she was assigned to me, or I was assigned to her, whichever way it goes, on 21 November. And she is. I suppose I'm going to refer to you both in the third and person mostly, because it's too difficult to try otherwise. So we were joined in that legal partnership on the 21st of November, but I didn't hear from her until I think it was the 1st of December, or maybe a little bit later, and we have had very little interaction, and because Clare is on annual leave, because it's that time of the year, it is not really accurate to say that we've got a couple of months to prepare for the trial, because you've really got to factor in the time that someone's on annual leave, really, don't you? And considering that my first ever criminal court appearance was on the 10th of July. I was arrested for the first time in my life. On the 4th of July, I appeared in court on the 10th of July, which was the Monday following. And from there, Clayton Williams wrote my legal aid application, and then I found out that I was told, I rang court and I was told that I was assigned to see, my memory is actually quite bad, and that's what I wanted to talk about. Actually, I'll just say that first. The thing is that I do ramble. I have ADHD, but I am medicated for ADHD with Ritalin. But it turns out that what I very early on, and when I'm talking about early on, I'm talking about sort of 18 months ago, when this chain link of reasonably unconnected people, but I am a serial victim, and serial victimhood is a very, very, very real phenomenon. and it's tragically for serial victims often interpreted by others as their being the cause of all of the kerfuffles around them, and then people call us the common denominator, and it's such a funny intellectual mistake to make, because try thinking about it this way: is how could it possibly come about that one could not be involved in each of one's experiences with other people? We are always present in our experiences with others, and it is not at all rational to conclude from the fact of our sentient existence that we are causative of everything that we experience. And what we know about serial victimhood is that, a victim becomes magnetic to more victimisers, and so on and so on and so on. And now in this video to the both of you, which I'm going to make to both of you. I had one to Clare, but the thing is that I have to do it to both of you because it's the time of the year where I am very concerned about, as I was talking about before, the amount of time that I have with my counsel. And my counsel is my counsel in name only, as far as any relationship so far exists. And so my first assigned counsel, and I think I managed to track her down eventually because I was told by the registrar, I think, or whomever it was who gave me my bail sheet, or somebody, I don't know. I don't know, honestly. I'm very new, completely new to all this, so that I should be proactive to track her down. And it was April, Calland, and eventually I managed to get hold of her, and she had no idea. She had no idea I was on her caseload, and she was very lovely, but she said, "Well, I'm afraid there's been a mistake. Either I've no possible space." And I won't go into it, but I was subsequently assigned to 3 other lawyers, Chris Nolan, Michael Starling, and then PPS, and then Clare, and the case review judges appeared to be of the opinion that I had been too picky, but they'd all ditched me. The only one that I ditched was Michael Starling, and that's because, as I said to him, and this is just, I'll just say, the short version, and it should be telling enough, as I said, I'm going to get this treatment from prosecution. I don't need to get it from my own lawyer. Thank you very much. Because my mental health problems, as they are, and these are diagnosed, these are psychiatrically diagnosed, and they were diagnosed when I was in Hillmorton under the Mental Health Act over summer. I do not have a primary mental disorder, and that by itself disqualifies me from being held and attended in any way under the Mental Health Act, right? There are 2 reasons. It takes 2 reasons to be held under the Mental Health Act. It takes 1 reason to get out of it. Now, the reason I got out of it was not because I wasn't still suicidal, because I am. The reason I got out of it is because there was no primary mental health condition, no primary mental disorder. What happened was I was formally diagnosed with what had been previously speculated and what I had decided was the case from my own investigations. I had post-traumatic stress disorder. And on top of PTSD, I have active acute stress, and that's the reason that I went from the job seekers benefit with work deferral, which is what used to be called the sickness benefit. And then I was moved while in Hillmorton to, signed off by seen a psychiatrist, moved to, on application and accepted by MSD to what used to be the invalid's benefit but is now the supported living payments. Supported living payments do allow a person to work, and the rules are sort of not rules, but there's sort of basically no restrictions to the number of hours a person can work. I assume it is the case that if someone is working sort of 80 hours as a CEO, I think someone might get an inkling they're not too sick to work and might cut their benefit. But it goes to show that there is an encouragement for people to get back into work if they're able to, and to do what they can, because it's really not their fault. And it's a long-term conditions that anything they can do for themselves to make their lives a bit better, because work is not just money, it's got numerous benefits. A lot of them are social, psychosocial, right? But I've got no work capacity. And that's been since March or February that was written, and I'm still, my status legally remains the same, but my condition has dramatically worsened. Now, another diagnosis that came out of my time at Hillmorton was autism spectrum disorder, and this was, I'm not going to go into detail. I'm not going to go into details there. The details can come later. But the writing had been on the wall for quite a long time, and I'd had a good lot of time to think about it. And people say, "Oh, it's a relief to get a diagnosis," and in a way, it was, but I felt it was a bit of a fraudulent diagnosis, because I'm 46, but for people 20 years younger than me, it's a badge of honour to be neurodivergent. And I don't know if people take it particularly seriously when a highly verbal, intelligent, functional adult says I'm autistic, and I felt that I was too socially intelligent. I felt that there was that everything fit except for being too socially intelligent. As I've said, not very, but too much. But it turns out that that's actually not uncommon at all, especially for females, and especially because where we lack the social intellect, we're very good at, as they say, masking. And if it seems like every man and his dog is being diagnosed with autism, it's because it's much more prevalent than was thought. It is not that it's being overdiagnosed, it's because the diagnostic paradigm has been recalibrated to account for misperceptions about how it is. But my quality of life socially really does bear testament to the truth, and even my psychiatrist, who was knowledgeable and experienced and very patient, would get kind of irritated. I could tell he was getting a little bit frustrated with my inability to stop being the way that I am. And as Chris Nolan told me, the judicial, the court system, the judicial system, it's personality based. So we don't. There's no pretense that there's anything objective about the so-called justice system. There isn't. It just depends if the judge likes me or not. And people tend not to like me. And that's rather miserable for me, really. And I'm not getting into anything legally substantive, but it's not justice for a charming criminal to get chosen as the winner because they're charming. Because that's just the justice system participating in crimes against innocent people, and it's also I'm devastated. I was devastated to realise that that's what the police are doing too. No, I'm not going to get into anything substantive, but what I am sort of out here on that meta level, where I'm just wanting to express the fact that having the trial on the 12th of February is not, it's bonkers, it's totally bonkers, it's morally bonkers, it's logically bonkers, it's legally bonkers. And I say it's legally bonkers because it's not legal. It's not. And the scary thing for me is that I know this, but it doesn't seem that anyone in the justice system understands that. And that's why I am weighing up an awful lot of different options. Well, not an awful lot, but about 4 or 5. Now, I know, I really want to call you Tess. Maybe that is your name. I don't know. Maybe it'll come to me. I believe it was you who had suggested to Judge, who was that first one? Then you weren't there, your colleague had attended instead. I don't know, the guy who reminds me of Judge Rinder, Gilbert, he had said that the prosecuting lead had proposed a trial fitness assessment, and he had said that he thought that was wholly inappropriate as a use of resources. Because I was clearly very familiar with court processes. Now, I thought he was a very nice man, but he's talking bullshit. I have no idea about court processes. I'm just good at reading legislation, and I've worked in a lot of, not a lot of, but I've worked in a few government departments. And I've worked with direct sections of Acts of Parliament, right? And I've got a philosophy degree, so I'm quite well primed to, like I've done a bit of logic, so which is calculus, which is, at least the kinds of calculus that I did were formatted mostly like linear algebra. So, but with an advantage because, legislation isn't set, it's not linear, but, you can have lots of these subsections, and that's my forte, and I'm really, really good at reading legislation, and bloody hell, there are loads of Acts of Parliament, and I don't know the half of them, but I've found out a whole lot of them, and I don't think that anyone operating in the justice system is aware of half of the ones that I've uncovered. But the worst thing, the most horrifying thing for me is that no one appears to be familiar with the Policing Act or the Criminal Procedure Act. And at this late stage, it's not appropriate for me to be freshing about these problems when I'm not going to be. Well, it's the 27th of December, and my counsel, whom I barely know, is back on the 15th of January, which is nearly 3 weeks away. And then there's about 3.5 weeks until the trial. But the prosecution side's been consistently working toward the trial since July, and I'm going to start in January, and it's not, let alone not be fair. That's not legal. I'm sorry, it's not legal. And the thing that terrifies me is that court's going to go ahead anyway. And I've been living a life of victimhood for over 2 years now, and that carried through from Wellington, where I left, where I decided to sort of gnaw off a limb to come and, start again in Christchurch. But the criminal abuse started up again, and I'm not, I really am avoiding saying anything substantive, but or at least specifically substantive. But I was evicted from my home, and the person who evicted me from my home, I don't know how she got an eviction order, because I had already given notice. And I'd given notice before my application for a rehearing had been decided, and while that rehearing was being deliberated on by the adjudicator, it's in suspension, okay? And nobody knows when the decision is going to come through and the suspension's lifted. But I'd rung a guy called Adrian, who's in fines, so above or specifically inside whatever civil enforcement. So he's like the head or chief registrar or something of fines, which is unfortunately doesn't name bailiffs, but you know that he organises the bailiffs. And it was quite because I was really concerned that the nature of the people who were trying to get rid of me, I was really concerned that they were going to get an eviction order by telling porkies about me, because I had already given notice and I already had movers booked, you see, and I had to cancel the movers because the hearing, I mean, it is really, 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 really crazy, but I gave notice to the company that I rented through, not the person who got the eviction order, to the company who I rented through. And I had already booked movers, and that was for my birthday, which was the 5th of July. And I gave notice because the building was dangerously illegal, and we're talking Loafers Lodge. So, and there were a number of other reasons that I won't go into, but it was clearly not somewhere that I could live anymore. I'd already tried to kill myself 3 times while I was living there because of the treatment I was receiving from some people. Now, I had a talk to Adrian a couple of weeks ahead, and he said, if we get an eviction order through, then at that point we have to act on it, where we are not, we don't get a say in whether it's fair or just or realistic or based in reality or anything like that. We just have to, our part in the chain is just enacting it. But he said, I do understand your position. It's not an unusual position, unfortunately. And he said that it would be very unlikely with the shortage of bailiffs that one would be available within a week of your moving date anyway. Because remember, I had movers booked, and I had told this to the people that I was renting from the company. And that's a hand-delivered notice, and that was delivered by hand, witnessed by me, by a person from a social support agency who has not written an affidavit, but she's written something that would stand up in court. And I took photos of her delivering it. Okay, so she delivered this by hand. Okay, my notice of terminating my tenancy. I needed to give only 2 days because that's what you need to give for a dangerous building. But I gave them longer. I gave them as much time as notice as I did for the movers, because I just chose the soonest date, which was the 5th of July. Didn't really want to move my birthday, but hey, what else am I going to do? Now, the hearing at the tenancy tribunal about whether or not I should have my tenancy terminated is on the 6th. And I got in touch with the tenancy tribunal at around the same time that I had given my notice, hand delivered, proven, definitely proven. I can prove it to anybody. Given my notice of departure, so that I asked for an adjournment. There was another sort of a reasonably minor matter about sort of rent arrears that had been applied for by the same applicant. But the really big matter was whether or not I was allowed to keep my home. But because I had booked movers to leave my home and obviously not be there, it seemed a pretty silly and irresponsible use of tenants' money, because the fund, the tenancy tribunal, is funded by unclaimed bonds, to go ahead with that hearing, considering that the major decision to be made was whether or not I should keep my home, and I'd given notice to leave it, and I would have been leaving the day before. I would have been gone the day before. Well, my stuff would have been gone, and then I had given notice for the, I think sort of like the following, 2 days or something, so, I could clean and stuff like that, and I used to work as a cleaner, domestic cleaner, so I've been trained when I was at university. So yeah, I know what I'm doing, and despite everything, I work to my own morals. I try not to stoop to the morals of those who have none. So I do what I think is reasonable to do, and I'm thinking about the future tenants as well. And the answer came back from the registrar that the adjudicator said that was an insufficient reason to delay the case. Now, I'm not even gonna comment on that, right? So there's more at stake by not attending a hearing. I mean, he could have ended my tenancy. Who cares? Because I'm gone anyway. But the thing is that a non-attendance invites publication of my name and all sorts of other nonsense. So I really did have to attend the hearing, and I attended it over the phone. And I attended it over the phone, having been released from the police station in the wee hours of the morning, about 3 or 4 o'clock, because I'd been arrested, you see, because my neighbour had made a complaint about me to the police just after he beat me up. And I had a lot of bruises all over my body, and I was very upset. And I wasn't very interested in the tenancy tribunal hearing. And it was, I was found against, and there were no surprises there. But I didn't really care very much, because I was going through quite a lot on a number of personal levels. but I had rebooked for the 25th of July, which is the next the soonest to the 5th. And I'd given notice again. And this time I gave notice because family violence. And it was family violence that was supported by the people who purported to be the agents of my landlord. And it was a pretty sort of hellish time, but I gave notice again, and this time it was under Family Violence Act, and I went through exactly all the correct processes. Now it's not called, departing or anything. It's just called withdrawing from a tenancy, and you give a not you give 2 days. 2 days is the most time you have to give, and I gave a lot more than that because I was beaten up on the 4th, and my movers were coming on the 25th, and although I had a lot to do, my GP really put her foot down and sent me to respite, so I went into residential respite for a little while. And I was quite frightened. And it was not a very restful time, because respite is a place to get away from all your troubles. And unfortunately my troubles just kept rolling over me like a tank. Now, I had managed to move somewhere else just before my stuff was moved out, because the most time I spent away from that place was the better for me in terms of my own physical safety. And also my water had been turned off. And I'm not going to go into the substance of that, because I've gone into the substance of that before, and that's something probably for court. But it was quite difficult to live in my home for 6 days without any water. I had to use the toilet, and I'm a very hygienic person, and I'm immunocompromised as well, so I was quite concerned by this health hazard. And the surrounding circumstances will be raised in court. But I was going through a very, 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 very difficult time, you see. You can think of all the layers and layers and layers of things that were going on. And police took no notice of the assault, but I had medical photos taken, and the GP I saw made a claim for me to ACC, and ACC accepted the claim. And I because of the type of injury it warranted it qualified me for trauma counselling and a number of other assistances. But I was too traumatised to access them. That's how bad it was. I didn't even know how to go about getting this help. I couldn't interpret it. That's what trauma does to you. It really scrambles your brain. And, it can be said, Caitlin has mental health problems. But people don't think trauma from being beaten up by your neighbour, do they, when you say mental health problems? So people shouldn't say mental health problems because that's not how people interpret it. You need to say Caitlin has PTSD and Caitlin has severe stress, meaning that she can't work at all. I don't think calling them mental health problems is very accurate. That they are injuries and they are disabilities, and I have autism spectrum disorder and I've got a previous diagnosis of ADHD, which I medicated, and then as a teenager I had a diagnosis of obsessive compulsive disorder. Now those three things are not just a collection of disabilities, they are found to be commonly comorbid, and a lot of the research into these neuropsychiatric development problems has really opened up to the extent that we can see that a lot of the symptoms are not just superficially overlapping, they may have a common etiology. Now, ADHD is a fucking pain in the ass, I have to say, but the other two, they become a problem for me because other people don't endear me to other people, right? So I'm disadvantaged in the court of law already. And Judge Gilbert said, I mean, honestly, I felt really bad about speaking ill of him, but it's fucking scary, man. He said, I've met lots of people, lots of women like you, lots of people in your situation. It's like, oh, well, that's a really bad sign. So he thinks he knows me already. He hasn't met anyone like me. I haven't met anyone like him. You know, what a stupid thing to fucking say. All he knows about me is my charges. That's not me. That's what the police said about me. Why are we having a hearing if that's taken as a given? You know, like, I think police prosecution would, being a public service, ought to agree. We wait for a trial. I mean, even if the trial's really shit and incompetent, at least let's pretend that we're going to wait and see, that it's not just the charges that describe a person. But he said, why are you looking backward? Why are you looking backwards? Surely you should move forward and move on with your life and let it get better. And it's like, it is so frightening that a judge in a major court has not heard of serial victimisation or trauma or getting to hear the other side of the story before making a judicial decision. Because he was making a judicial decision, at least he was starting to make one while acknowledging that a second case review hearing was required. But so far, the trial has not started in substance, but it's being groomed. The trial is being groomed on the basis of the charges. The charges are just something that police write. And there are two sides to it. Police are the prosecution. I am the defence. How can a case review hearing be held without taking both sides into account? And I had no lawyer at that point because I had to disengage from legal aid entirely in order to even attempt to escape the harassment I was receiving from Michael Starling. My God, like that guy is a fucking crazed stalker of a man. He's got real fucking problems, and he was my fucking problem. I had to go in court and say, get this guy off my back, or I'm gonna apply for a restraining order now. It was criminal harassment. It was criminal harassment. He would not let go, not even after I left legal aid. So I was undefended, you see, and Judge Gilbert didn't seem to see that was a problem because he said, well, Caitlin's clearly familiar with the justice system, which is what I mentioned earlier. And I said, I'd made a couple of I waited patiently till he had finished because he was being recorded. I don't know if it was just Hansard or what, I don't know. Oh, I think they do both, don't they? Yeah, that's right, because I went for a job doing that at Parliament. Yeah, you listen to the recording and check the Hansard records. But I waited till he'd said his piece, and then I just said, may I make some corrections, please? And he said, of course. And I made some corrections, and the corrections didn't make it into the minute. And the corrections were huge. He made blundering mistakes. And I don't know how one can make such a blundering mistake as to confuse a facility with legislation with knowledge about how the justice system works. I haven't a fucking clue. And the trouble is that because I've only just met Claire and she's on leave and she's probably got 60 other clients and she doesn't know anything about me, and I think that she thinks I'm guilty because I think she's just taken it as read what the charges are, and she seems to also entertain the idea, well, she does entertain the idea that I may change my plea to guilty, which is off the planet. Why would I plead guilty to something that I didn't do? I mean, I understand sort of plea bargaining and stuff, but to suggest that to a client before you've even fucking discussed the charges and the evidence is bonkers. Sorry, Claire, but that's bonkers. I mean, you would only recommend that someone innocent changed their plea to guilty if you really thought they had no chance of proving the truth. And I hear wonderful things about Claire, but I also don't know if the people who have said those wonderful things have any sense of the compatibility between us, because the charges don't indicate a goddamn fucking thing about the truth. And I think I'm in very dangerous territory if I'm to carry on with a lawyer who thinks that we're just going to have a few sessions over 3 weeks before the trial. I feel that I'm in a lot of danger, and I don't know the system well enough to know how to deal with that. I don't know if I can instruct Clare to be merely a mouthpiece for my own defence, which I know. I'm not capable of it because I'm very badly traumatised and stressed. I mean, the stress is not anxiety, it's a whole physical, mental, everything syndrome. It's neurological. I've got changes in my brain. My balance is, my balance is impaired. Okay, so that's not anxiety, it's stress. Stress is a full body syndrome, and it's been 2 years now, so my body's suffering. It's a bit like having, there are a lot of symptoms in common with like Parkinson's and, MS, and in some situations it can lead to, neurological problems like that. Like, it's against the law to drag me through court with no one paying any attention to my medical letters. And Claire said, if your distress is getting too much for you, you should think about seeing your GP. It's like, I've been seeing my GP ever since I was released from Hamilton. I'm medicated up to the eyeballs, mate. I take the maximum dose of clonazepam every day. I take Zopiclone every night. My GP says, what do they think that I do? She's a physician. She's not a human rights lawyer. And if a person is purportedly victimised by someone to the extent that the impact on their mental health means that that's a criminal tort, then why isn't she told to see her GP or talk to a mental health nurse? Do you see? She's got mental health problems. Surely she ought to see a counsellor. How does this make any sense? I've tried to take my life 5 times, and I'm not waiting till Claire gets back on the 15th to wait however many days after that it takes for her to get going for the new year, to get a few days scheduled to practice my defence. That bears no reality to the evidence that I have or anything. She doesn't know anything about my side. I'm not waiting till the 15th of January. I'm making my own decision. And I'm glad that police have stopped harassing me with welfare checks now, because they're not welfare checks. They're not welfare checks. It's harassment, and it's track covering. And they're very abusive, and I've got some recordings of the abuse. One of them said he didn't care if I killed myself. And it's not going to wash with coronial services that it's a mental health problem. And, you know, sometimes police have referred me to, not Samaritans, what's the other one? You know, the other big one. And I've emailed police and I've shown them pieces of the literature from their website, because I did ring them once because I was that desperate, and they were really good, except what they do is they have a solutions focus, like how to solve the practical problems in your life that are making you suicidal, which is great because they recognise that those are the things that make you suicidal. They recognise that it's frequently not a mental health problem. I'm not depressed, I'm happy as a clam. My suffering is not inside my mind. My suffering is done to my body or threatened to do to my body. Sleeping in a bus shelter on a night of low of 7 degrees, that's not mental health. It's your body. It's your body. And being beaten up by uniformed officers it's not my mental health, that's my body. Those bruises were not on my mental health, they were on my body. When my body starts becoming victimised in this, I'm not seeing much for future. And I don't want to die. But as I've explained before, people have to do things that they don't want to do sometimes for their, you know, for their higher good, right? And I feel like I don't have many ways to avoid acknowledging the truth that the only safety I'm going to find is in getting out of a life in which I'm targeted every week by at the end of the day, the system that's supposed to prevent these things happening to us. And that's not a life that the United Nations recognises as being acceptable. And everything police and Ministry of Justice says about their mission and their goals are not displayed anywhere in the attitudes or behaviours of police and courts. And I'm not very confident of having any quality of life. So I just want you guys to know, and I don't know when either of you are going to see this, I just want you guys to know that although JAT and CMM tell me, ask your counsel, despite my repeatedly saying my counsel is on annual leave, she's not at work, I can't talk to her. The 15th is too late, and I'm not even going to talk to her on the 15th, it's too late. It's nearly 3 weeks away, I'm going to be making my decision before then. And I've read medico-legal literature about suicide. There is too much on my record from medical professionals, including psychiatrists, acknowledging that my suicidality is caused by victimisation and neglect in the community, for there to be any justification for harassment by police again, or mental health services about my suicidality. It's not mental health. Certainly got a mental health impact, but it's not solved by police harassing me. It's not solved by talking to a mental health nurse. It's solved by the abuse stopping. And someone in this arena has got to make some justice happen. I don't know how. I know what the laws say. I do. But I've got no power to make anyone obey them, you see. The only control I have anymore is over whether I live or die. And that's not very nice. But I'm a pragmatic person. And I'm very scared.